Welcome to the Hey Dad podcast, a conversation where you join David and Reese at the table as they talk about the many questions of life. Whether you're in the car, at the gym, or just distracting yourself from being productive. Why don't you pull up a chair? We're glad you're here.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hey Dad podcast, where you join us at the table as we talk about the many questions of life. I'm Reese.
And I'm David.
He's my dad. We're going to jump in with the question of the day. So, Padre.
Yes.
I'm wondering, once I find the question, there it is. If you could be an athlete for a single game, who would you choose? Any athlete for one game.
Gosh, that's so hard. I'd probably have to go back and do like a Michael Jordan. When Michael played, when he was on, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think to be Jordan would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
He was really, really good.
That is a good one. I think I would choose one of these two. Of course, I got to give two answers. By the way, I'm infamous for giving two answers
every time.
For those of you that this is your first episode. I would either choose like Federer, because like the feeling of just being caught in good rally after good rally would just be invigorating.
Yeah.
Because like for tennis, every point is an absolute battle.
That's
and
true.
There's few feelings that's better than like hitting a really good shot. Just back and forth.
That's a good point.
It's a great feeling.
Yeah.
So that would be invigorating. The other one, I think it would be cool to be like Tiger Woods in the Masters, doing his best game of all time.
If I did a second one, it would be a golf one.
Because like to be able to play golf and hit it exactly where you want it to go. Yeah. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I'd probably want to be either Tiger in the prime or Bubba Watson is one now, who can just make the wildest, craziest shots.
Yeah, it would just be cool because I've never had a shot like this in golf because I've played like 3 times.
Yeah.
But I hear like whenever you hit just a good feeling shot.
It is.
It's kind of like how I described tennis where you like, there's such immense satisfaction in doing it well.
Well, golf, it gets you so into it, you keep playing.
Yeah.
Like you hit that one good shot and it just keeps you going.
Yeah.
Even though you hit 37 bad shots. That one good one I don't know. I guess it's like the closest thing to gambling. You're like, yeah!
Yeah, I guess that's true. But yeah, I mean, any of those 3 options would be sick, though.
Yeah, they would be. It'd be a lot of fun.
So, once again, we've been discussing the personal reboot.
Yeah.
And for these next couple weeks, we already did one last week, so this is our second of 3. We're talking about baggage. We're talking about how sometimes we can carry our past and things from our past like we are a giant suitcase.
Yep,
and
wearing around.
It makes things that are unenjoyable worse, and it makes things that would be enjoyable less so.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so we want to learn how to move past our hang-ups. We want to learn how to identify them. We want to learn how to define them. Yeah. The personal reboot you made is in part to be able to do just that. Yeah. Now, if people want to do the personal reboot, because this is just, us talking about it, where would they want to go to find that?
You can find the personal reboot at theconfidentman.me. That's this coaching website I run. And it's just there. It's a free download. You just put your email in and you'll get a PDF copy of it. It's short. It's not super long reading. And a lot of it is questions just to help you kind of think through where you're at in doing a personal reboot.
Yeah, it really is a guide. It's not a novel. It's a guide for you to walk the journey yourself. Yeah. It was very helpful for me. As we talked about a couple weeks ago, I did it with Emily. And we did it as a couple, and it was great. So highly recommend checking that out. But for now, let's go ahead and identify the second kind of baggage that we carry. Hangups.
Yeah, hangups. A lot of people say, what is a hangup? Well, I define hangup as a thing that a lot of times you started when you were younger, either as a child, as a teenager, that you're still struggling with today. So there could be things, like lying, bragging, You know, we don't think of those things, but those are things a lot of times you start when you're young. But then you get into like gaming, porn, alcohol, drugs, gambling, some of the major things. Most people started those when they were either children, teenagers, or even early young adult age. And then they're in their, you know, late 20s, 30s, 40s, and they're still struggling with these things. That to me is what a hang-up is.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess a good way to kind of define it in a one-liner is a hang-up is a unhealthy coping mechanism.
Yeah, it is. Because what it is we all cope with life. And coping is a normal, we learn how to deal with the stresses and the distractions of life.
Right.
So coping is good, but a lot of times when we were younger, we learned something that was unhealthy, and that became our go-to coping mechanism.
Right.
And then it stays with us. And what we want to do is not have those unhealthy sides of us, the unhealthy coping mechanism. And a lot of times it's seen in excess. You know, like someone who eating is normal, we need to eat. But if you eat in excess, it becomes very unhealthy.
Right.
And a lot of people, their food has become their coping mechanism. So they just eat. And then they get larger, which they want to cope with that. So they eat more. Yeah. So it's just an unhealthy way of what's driving them.
Yeah. And I like what you said there. Like, not all coping mechanisms are bad. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on some ways to deal with unhealthy coping mechanisms. But anything that's excessive, anything that's, you know, well, actually, we're about to talk about how to identify it. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that.
Let's do it.
So you might be carrying the baggage of hangups if. What are some symptoms of the fact that, hey, I've got some past hangups that I need to deal with?
Yeah, a lot of times the hangups are something that are not just yours, but there's almost a pattern in the family. You almost see that well, my grandparent, my dad or mom, you know, my life. And it's not just that things are passed down, everything's passed down in some way or another, but it's causing chaos. You know, it's causing chaos in the family. It's causing problems. It's causing battles. There's all kinds of things that could be happening, but those are usually a sign of hangups. You know, someone's having that issue.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think a good way you can identify it is if you have a habit that controls you instead of you controlling it. It's a hang-up when it always goes further than you mean for it to. When you always just want to have a drink, and then you wake up the next morning with the biggest hangover because you dropped $200 on just drinking. Yeah. Or, well, I'll just check social media a little bit. Yeah. And then, boom, 2 hours have gone by. Yeah. Or, you know, I'll just play this game for 15 minutes. And now it's 2 a.m. And you're like, golly, I should have gone to bed 3 hours ago. Yeah. That can identify also that you're dealing with a hang-up.
Yeah, a lot of times hang-ups cause things to go to excess, and we lose control. We think we're going to have control, but then we don't. And another one that a lot of times is the most obvious is when your hang-up is destructive. You know, if you have a gambling hang-up and you're going and losing all the money you own, that's a problem. You know, if you have problems with pornography and you can't have a normal sex life with your partner, or you're continuing to look at it even though you're married, you have kids and all this, you know, there's a lot of issues that can happen in your life from that, and it can cause a lot of problems. A lot of marriages break up over it. So when you see destructive aspects happening because of your hang-up, that means it's not a good hang-up. You know, it's something you want to deal with. And you can say, well, it's so-and-so's fault, it's so-and-so's fault, but it's just not good for you when it's causing pain and trouble for you and the people you love, the people who are around you.
Yeah, I think that's true. And that's, like you said, one of the most obvious ones.
Yeah.
I think one area that we can identify very quickly what's going on and that we have a hang-up that we can sometimes neglect a little bit is what is the first thing you want to do after something negative happens, whether that's something or even something uncomfortable. The first thing you go to.
Yeah.
If it's something that's unhealthy, that means it's a hang up.
Yeah.
If immediately the first thing you want to do, the moment that you feel rejected, is just binge eat,
Yeah.
that means food has now become an unhealthy coping mechanism. It's a hang up for you now. If the first thing you want to do whenever you feel threatened is, project this big vibrato and resort to, I don't know, violence or violent words,
Yeah.
well, that's a coping mechanism. Your anger has become a coping mechanism. It's become a hang up for you.
Yeah, and a lot of people who deal with addiction, what happens is the addiction is their coping mechanism.
Yes, for sure.
So they can get clean for a while, but then the stresses of life happen, the problems of life. So what do? They run to their addiction. And that's why people struggle. That's why it takes them a long time to work through it, is because they don't know how to live life without it. How do I handle stress? I run to my drugs. I run to whatever. And they have to learn that that's the problem. They have to find the healthy way to deal with those things.
You're very correct. I know this is actually from, I believe, like addiction courses, is there's the HALT principle.
Yeah.
If you're hungry, you're angry, you're lonely, or you're tired, watch out, because that negative coping mechanism is probably going to pop up. Yeah. That's going to be a season of, to use biblical terms, temptation. It's going to be a tempting moment. And what tempts you is a hang up.
Yeah.
Whatever is tempting you in one of those moments, when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, is most likely a hang up if it's something unhealthy.
Yeah, and that's what happens is you're learning how to deal with those feelings with something that's not good for you. It's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt other people. And you have to kind of learn yourself, which is part of learning how to deal with the stresses of life. And that's healthy to deal with those things. But when you have an unhealthy addiction to something, that becomes your crutch. So you just lean on that. So you don't learn how to do the other stuff.
That's a really good illustration, because it hurts you in the long term because you don't develop actual strength.
Yeah.
Like if we look at a muscle, how does a muscle get strong? By carrying a heavier load.
Yeah.
But if, let's say, you don't want to have to walk anywhere, so you just use a wheelchair. Like you can walk perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It would take a second to get your balance, and so you're just like, I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to go around a wheelchair. Your legs would literally stop being able to work because you're no longer trying to use them.
Yeah.
And sometimes emotionally, we haven't learned how to cope with some of the things that life will naturally bring because, like you said, we keep going to the crutch.
Yeah, and the people who overcome addiction, the way they overcome is learning those healthy things.
Yes.
They learn how to do it, but it's hard work.
It is hard.
Because they didn't learn it maybe younger when most people learn it. So it's kind of like relearning. Or when you get older, if you want to try to learn a language, it's a lot easier to learn it when you're young than when you're older.
True.
As you know, you're learning Spanish.
I'm on 4 years now.
Yeah.
4 years.
And so it's one of those things that you want to learn it young. If you don't, it just takes a lot harder to learn it when you're older.
But it's still possible.
It is possible.
And that's what I want to tell you as a listener or as a viewer. It's still possible. It doesn't mean just because you wasted yesterday doesn't mean that it's over today.
Yeah, because what you're doing is you're doing almost a crash course of muscle building. So you're having to learn how to cope with life without that addiction, which means you're having to work new muscles. So if you've ever been to like a physical therapist who's working you in a muscle that maybe you're very weak in, you're like, oh, I didn't realize I had muscles there. Those hurt. That's what you're doing emotionally.
Yeah, it's very true. And let's go ahead and start talking about that.
Yeah.
If we're wanting to drop the baggage of our hangups, if we're wanting to be able to move on, how are we going to do that? How do we start?
Well, I think you start by finding the healthy coping mechanisms, the things that you do that aren't necessarily destructive. Like if you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, you need to look at, maybe I'm not getting enough sleep. Maybe my schedule is not good. Having a good night's sleep, I mean, science even now is talking about how much better it is. But people stay up late, they do this, they do that. And a lot of times bad decisions are made when you're tired. So if you find a way to set your rhythm so you get good sleep, you've conquered a lot of your problems already.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to find those healthy things for you. Exercise, good rest, a good diet. Those kind of things help you learn how to cope with life.
Right.
So you want to find the healthy things, the things that are good for you. And some days, like we've talked many times about, as a family, we always did, if things got really hectic, every once in a while we do what we call a pajama day.
Loved pajama days.
Pajama day was where you didn't change out of your pajamas. We watched movies, we ate food, we did nothing all day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just one of those reset days.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a healthy thing.
Yep.
You can't do pajama day all the time, but you can do it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to find the things that are healthy, that kind of help you deal with life and go like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I remember for our family, you were in charge of doing camps for our Mississippi district, church camps. And during those weeks where we would do camps, you're going 100%, and you are not getting enough sleep.
No.
You're probably eating too much a little bit. You're going to bed at midnight and waking up at 5 and just, literally 16-hour days, just hammering it out. And so I remember every year, after we would finish doing camps, we would have a pajama day for like a week.
Yeah.
Now, we did like bathe and stuff. But it was a lazy week the next week. And that was so good. In the moment I didn't think about it. I was like, oh, this is just what you do. But some people wouldn't have. Yeah. Some people would have been like, well, we just got to suck it up and keep moving. Yeah. And then they would start having unhealthy habits, So,
a lot of times your unhealthy habits come from unhealthy coping mechanisms. So you kind of look at, okay, what am I doing that maybe is not helping? And then I would say the other thing is, if you're dealing with some hangups that are just hard, you're not winning over them, get help.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit last show about getting help. There's people who can help you. God can help you. There's different things that can happen that you need that, we need each other.
Right.
God created us to be in community because no one by themselves can do everything. And so it's not a sign of weakness when you get help. It's actually a sign of, I need someone else's strength to help me. Just like if you go to a physical therapist, they're helping you do things with muscles you didn't know to do.
Yeah.
And we're doing that maybe with our emotions, maybe with our spirit, maybe with our mind. Those kind of things. It's nothing wrong with getting help. You're just getting coaching.
Yeah. And we talked about making those positive coping mechanisms. That takes time.
Yeah.
That is not a short process.
Yeah.
There's a principle called neuroplasticity, which means the more you think through something or the more you enforce a habit, the more deeply ingrained in your brain it becomes. And by the same token, the more deeply ingrained it is in your brain, the longer it takes for it to dissolve. Yeah. Now, the cool thing is it can. You can literally rewire your brain over an amount of time, but it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of focus, and it is, like you said, it's hard to do alone. So if you walk that with people, it's helpful.
You walk it out with people. We look at pro athletes. They're the best of the best, but they still get coaches.
Right.
And what they do is they get that third person perspective into their life. So why wouldn't we need that in our life to get that third person perspective in what we do?
Yeah. Now, this third way to let the baggage go. Describe it to us a little bit, because I think the way you say it's very, very good, succinct.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things you have to do is understand that when you're letting hangups go, it means you're going to have a lifestyle change. The way you live life was not working. The way you cope with life is not working. So you've got to understand everything's going to change. And what that deals with is you've learned how to live your life with a negative coping mechanism. So you're going to have to learn to live life with healthy ones, which means your life's going to have to reorient. And that's not wrong.
No.
It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you were going the wrong direction. You got to go the right direction. So everything's going to change. And people say, well, does that mean I'm going to have to go to counseling and do this and do that? Maybe.
Very, very possible.
And it may be. And you may learn how to express yourself. You may learn how to deal with anger. You may learn how to deal with pain and loss. That's a good thing. Because you're learning to do it the right way.
Yes.
It takes work.
Yes.
And it means your life is going to change, but it's a good change.
Yes.
It's a positive change. And that's what we have to remember.
Yeah. And I think in a way what you're learning to do, because you are adding good positive coping mechanisms, but you're also diving deep and dealing with the problem behind the problem.
Exactly.
Like, maybe overeating is a problem for you.
Yeah.
It's not just overeating. There's usually the thing that you're trying to deal with because of overeating. Let's say somebody deals with a lot of shame. They just have a crippling sense of shame. And so eating is how they feel better.
Yeah.
And it's how they deal with it. And yet, it's negative because it keeps feeding the cycle of shame.
Yeah.
So not only are they going to have to replace it with a better coping mechanism, they're also going to have to deal with the shame itself.
Yeah.
They're going to have to look that in the face, which is where support comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But once you begin to do that, positive momentum can occur.
Yeah. You can get some good changes in your life and know that those good changes will actually give you a better life. The life you want to live is possible.
Yes, it is. So it's worth dealing with your hangups.
It is.
All right, let's jump into the Q&A section.
All right.
We get to talk about a couple of the questions. Once again, if you guys want to send us questions, please do. Because if you don't, we'll make them up.
We will.
So here we go. Question number 1. Whenever I look at past hurts, because last week we talked about hurts.
Yeah.
It's too painful. How do I build up the courage to face the past hurts of my life?
I think the good thing to do is two things. One, take blame out of it. There may be some blame you have to deal with in it, but a lot of times our past hurts were something someone did to us, and we may feel guilty for that reason.
Yeah.
So what I would do is take the blame out of it and deal with the hurt. And then I would just get help. I mean, you got to have help, because a lot of times you're looking at it from a perspective of a child or whenever you were hurt, and you need someone to give you that adult perspective.
Yeah.
That outside perspective to say, hey, why don't you change the way you think about it? And when we hear that, sometimes light bulbs go off. Because again, we can't see it that way. We need that outside perspective. So I would think the courage you need a lot of times, one is just to make that appointment to go tell someone what you're dealing with. Once you do that, that person can help you to do it. And, if it's another person who's going through the same thing, that's not what you need. You need someone who's good at this, a professional, or someone who, is a counselor, mentor, wisdom, someone who can help you with those kind of things.
Yeah. And pretty much what they're going to guide you through, I mean, from what I understand, the main way and kind of the only way of dealing with it is actually facing it. So any step that you can take towards actually facing those past hurts is going to be a step in the right direction.
It will be, no doubt.
Because sometimes the fear of those things, the running away, we end up letting it control us.
Yeah.
Because if you're running away from your past hurt, it's still controlling you.
Yeah.
If
It's
you're
still
denying
directing
it
you.
and shoving it down,
Yeah.
it's still controlling you. The only time where it doesn't control you anymore is where you can stare it in the face.
Yeah.
And that takes time, especially if it's something severe.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of time because there is literal physical reactions in your body linked with those memories.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to kind of process through those, which is why we recommend dealing with a professional in those areas.
Getting some help and letting people help you, like, of course, you've got to let God help you through it. And God uses people to help us do that. They say, well, I just asked God to take it away. Well, a lot of times if he just took it away, you wouldn't develop the muscles you need to live the life like we just talked about.
That's so good.
So a lot of times he doesn't take things away because he wants you to go through that journey so you get strong enough to live the way he wants you to live.
That's so good. And picture this. If you've developed the courage to deal with the one thing that you can't face right now, and you walk the journey of getting that courage, imagine how brave of a person you're going to be.
Yep, toward everything else. It's true.
Towards everything else in your life.
Yeah.
Because you will have built up a habit of, hey, I'm not going to run.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at it.
Yeah.
That is a life-changing that's a life-changing occurrence.
It is.
And even though it's hard, even though it takes time, it can be worth it.
Yeah.
It can be worth it. All right. Question number 2. This one's kind of deep. Which of your personality traits would you like to change if you could?
Ooh. Golly.
I know. They're going straight for the throat with this one.
Dang. Well, I don't know how this would... I'm not saying I'd want to change it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I grew up, I had a lot of insecurity. And I mean, up until 30 is when I finally began to I got help and began to deal with my stuff. And I look back on my life and I see that so much of what I did was insecure because I was a people pleaser, which people are normally, one way or the other with that. And that's not a bad thing because I love to serve people.
Right.
It's part of what I do. But when I was younger, the insecure side of that caused me to never really know what I wanted, what I thought, and I didn't really develop a lot. I was always fearful of what other people thought. And I can look back on my life and see how that hurt me, junior high, high school, college, as a young adult. So that's something I wish I could have had back. That I could have been more secure in who I was.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know the Lord, so I didn't have that aspect of it, and a lot of other stuff in my life. But I would say that would be the thing that if I could go back and change something, that would be it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it would have fixed everything, but it would have helped me a lot in the decisions I made.
That's very good. Okay, for me, I would probably say the thing that I would change is overthinking.
Mm-hmm.
My unhealthy habit would be trying to figure things out, trying to understand things. And a lot of times it can cause me to think through a problem so deeply, it ceases to be productive.
Mm-hmm.
Or take something negative that happens to me and I get lost in it.
Yeah.
Because I'm just so bent on thinking it through, trying to break it down. And, like you said, the strength side of that is God made me a very analytical person, a very deep thinker, and he can use that for stuff like this.
Yeah, yeah.
But if that becomes abused, it turns into overthinking.
Yeah, you can overanalyze every situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's something the Lord's been trying to free me of over the past few months, which in a way, it's still insecurity.
Yeah.
It comes from insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a similar thing, but that's kind of the vein of it that I struggle with is and it's a self-centered usually.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I think about myself a lot, not necessarily positively.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thoughts are based on me a lot.
That's a good point. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's what I'd want to adjust. Final question.
Okay.
What is one goal you hope to accomplish this year?
One goal that I want to accomplish this year. Okay. I don't know if this is vanity. It may be, but I want to I've still got a tire. I've had it for years.
Define to the people what a tire is.
A tire is just that ring of fat around my stomach, to be blunt. And I'd like to get rid of that. I don't need a six-pack. I'm not trying to get a six-pack. And I work out. I mean, I do stuff, but it's just that ring. And I know that in order to get there, it's going to have to be some other changes. And it's trying to find that right balance. But the other day I was thinking, I've been saying the same thing for probably the last 4 years. I'm going to get the tire off. And I'll do a little better and a little back. And I used to be a lot more overweight than I am now. But that's just one of those things you're like, I keep talking about it. I need to do it.
Yeah.
And so this year, I'm really, okay, I'm going to back off. I'm not going to try so hard quickly and try to, again, long-term, regular changes, just to live that lifestyle where that just comes off and it's not there.
Right.
And again, I'm not trying to get beach body. Nobody wants to see me without a shirt. For me, myself, I just don't want to have that.
You want to have a more flat stomach.
Yep.
is really
You don't to not have the handles, to not have the bulge, to where you look all right in your clothes. Mm-hmm. And again, could be a vain thing. Maybe that's my midlife crisis, but it's just something I want to do this year. I'm like, okay, this year I really, really, really want to do that.
Yeah, that's cool. For me, I'll be the classic Reese and give 2 answers. Answer number 1 is having a good habit of growth.
Yeah.
I want to have a lifestyle of consistently learning and growing.
Yeah.
I realized a couple weeks ago that my growth up to this point a lot of times is accidental and incidental rather than intentional.
That's good.
I don't have... John Maxwell asked, do you have a plan for growth?
Yeah.
And the answer is I just didn't really. I had goals.
Yeah.
But not just growth. I didn't have just daily growth habits. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to implement those. It's been great.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it thus far. Second one, and I'll make this short, would be Spanish. I want to get to the point this year to where at Thanksgiving, I can talk with my abuela in Spanish.
Yeah.
My abuela is from Honduras.
Uh-huh.
So doesn't speak English. Just doesn't speak English at all, hardly.
Yeah.
She says hi to me in English,
yeah.
but that's about it. And I've been able to have very broken, short conversations with her. Mm-hmm. Very broken and short. But I'd like to be able to have a decent, intermediate level conversation with my grandmother by Thanksgiving.
Yeah. That's good. I like that.
But thank you guys for joining us on the podcast today. That's all the time we have. Please send us your questions. YouTube, Instagram, email, messenger pigeon. We don't care. Just get them to us, and we would be happy to answer them. Because we don't mind making questions up at times, but we don't want to.
We prefer to have yours.
Yeah, we want to actually help people. So with their questions. So once again, we'll see you in the next episode, and thank you for joining us on this episode of the Hey Dad Podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the Hey Dad Podcast. If you enjoyed the episode today, subscribe so you don't miss any new content. We would also love for you to rate and leave a review and help us get the word out to more people. If these talks are making your life better, we ask that you share them with someone else. If you have any questions for us or anything going on in your life you want an opinion on, we would love to hear from you. You can email us at questions@heydad.us or send us a message on our Instagram page at the Hey Dad Podcast. Join us next week. We'll have a chair waiting for you.